My name is Clara Vance. I'm 34 years old. And at 29, I passed all 4 sections of the CPA exam on the first attempt, something less than 20% of candidates ever do. I remember sitting in my car in the parking garage of the Prometric Testing Center in Portland, Maine, staring at the word pass on my laptop screen, hands shaking so badly, I dropped my phone twice. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call my father. I called Julian, my husband, who answered on the first ring, because he always answered on the first ring, and he screamed so loud into the phone that I started laughing and crying at the same time. Ugly crying. Mascara running down my chin, not caring even a little bit. "You brilliant, terrifying woman," he said. "You absolute force of nature." That was 5 years before I stood in the lobby of the Harborview Club in Portland, in a black dress I'd bought for my cousin's wedding 3 years prior, holding a glass of sparkling water I hadn't touched, watching my mother work the room like she owned it. She did not own it. My father's name was on the guest list, because Preston, my brother, 31 years old, perpetually between great opportunities, had sweet-talked the membership coordinator into letting the family use the private dining hall for his girlfriend, Adrian's 30th birthday party. The room smelled like gardenias and money that didn't belong to anyone present. The lighting was warm and golden, the kind of lighting that makes everyone look like the best version of themselves, which is probably why Preston had chosen it. I stood near the far window, the one that looked out over the harbor, and watched the November water turn dark and cold under the early evening sky. Inside, 40-something guests clinked glasses. A jazz quartet played something soft near the bar. Waitstaff moved through the crowd with trays of crab-stuffed mushrooms and smoked salmon blinis. Julian was home with Maya. She had just turned 6 the week before. Her birthday cake had been shaped like a semi-truck because she was obsessed with her father's rig. She called it the Green Giant, and she had drawn it approximately 400 times in her crayon phase, every single drawing featuring the same detail: a little girl riding in the passenger seat, waving out the window. Julian had framed 12 of them, hung them in the hallway, told her they were fine art. I had left them building a blanket fort in the living room. Maya in her ladybug pajamas, Julian in his socks and his old University of Maine hoodie, holding a flashlight like it was the most important tool he had ever operated. "Go," he had told me. "It's family." I had nodded. I had gone. I should not have gone. My mother found me at 7:20, when the party was in full swing, and I had successfully avoided direct conversation for 40 minutes by pretending to be deeply interested in the harbor view. Evelyn Vance was 61 years old, and she had the posture of a woman who had decided, sometime in her early 40s, that the world owed her a certain quality of attention. She was wearing a cream-colored wrap dress, and her good pearls, the ones my father had given her for their 25th anniversary, and she was carrying a glass of Chardonnay that she had not offered to share. "You look tired," she said, by way of greeting. "Hi, Mom. That dress is from 3 years ago." She said it the way you'd note a factual discrepancy in a tax return. Not cruel exactly, just corrective. "It still fits, Clara." She touched my elbow, a gesture that looked like affection from across the room. "Preston needs you to look at something tonight. Some paperwork. It won't take long." This was the thing about my family and my profession. They had never once asked me how I was doing at work. They had never asked about my clients or my firm, or what it felt like to sit across the table from a business owner and help them understand why their numbers told a story they hadn't meant to write. They had never asked about the continuing education hours, the ethical standards, the liability. They did not understand that being a CPA was not the same thing as being a human calculator available at family gatherings. What they understood was that I was good with numbers, and that being good with numbers meant I was useful. "What kind of paperwork?" I asked. "Just some business things. You know, Preston's been working on expanding the dealership. He needs someone to look at the loan documents before he signs next week." She sipped her wine. "He trusts you." Preston trusted me the same way people trust a free consultation, completely, and with zero intention of following advice that cost them anything. "I'll look at it after dinner," I said. She smiled, patted my arm, and moved back toward the center of the room, where my father, Arthur, was holding court near the bar. Arthur Vance was 64, a retired civil engineer, a man who had built his identity around a single large infrastructure project in the 1990s and had been referencing it ever since. He was telling the story. Now, I could tell by the way his hands moved, the bridge gesture, the span gesture, to Adrian's father, who was nodding with the polite intensity of a man who had been told a story he could not escape. I turned back to the window. The harbor lights were coming on, one by one, reflecting broken and gold on the black water. My phone buzzed. Julian. Maya wants to know if you're having fun. I told her you're at a party, she said, and I quote, "Parties are loud and Mama doesn't like loud. She knows you, babe." I typed back, "She's not wrong. Tell her I'll be home for bedtime. She's already asleep." Fell out mid-fort construction. I've got photographic evidence. He sent the photo. Maya curled on the couch cushions they'd arranged on the floor, one arm around a stuffed elephant named Gerald, the flashlight still clutched in her other hand, pointed at nothing. Julian's hoodie was draped over her like a blanket. I stared at that photo for longer than I should have, there by the cold harbor window, in the borrowed golden light of a party I hadn't wanted to attend. If you've ever stood in a room full of your own family and felt completely invisible, not because they ignored you, but because the only version of you they could see was the version that was useful to them. Drop a comment below. I need to know I'm not alone in this. Dinner was served at 8. Round tables, white linens, little cards with names on them, in a font that probably had a French name. I was seated between my Aunt Ruth, who was 73, and wore a hearing aid. She frequently turned off on purpose, and my cousin Derek, who sold insurance and had opinions about cryptocurrency. Preston sat at the head table with Adrian, both of them glowing with the specific energy of people who were spending money they did not technically have on an evening that would be documented extensively for social media. He had his father's jaw and his mother's confidence, and he wore it like a blazer, well-fitted, expensive-looking, belonging to someone else. He caught my eye across the room and raised his glass. I raised my water glass back, across the room. That was always our relationship. Close enough to be called family. Far enough that I could never quite read what he was actually thinking. I had been the one to help him through his first business plan for the dealership 6 years ago. Sat with him for 3 weekends straight, going through projected cash flows, cost of inventory, operating expenses, break-even analysis. I had flagged 3 separate issues with his initial numbers. He had nodded through all of it, implemented none of it, and opened the dealership anyway. It had been limping along since year 2, not failing. Preston was charming enough to keep the floor traffic moving, but not healthy either. The kind of business that looked fine from the outside and bled quietly from the inside, which I had come to understand, was a pattern in my family that extended well beyond the dealership. The salmon arrived. Derek began explaining decentralized finance to Aunt Ruth, who had turned her hearing aid off 6 minutes earlier and was eating contentedly in silence. I cut my fish into precise thirds, the way I always did when I was anxious, and tried to remember the last time I had sat at a table with my family and simply felt glad to be there. I got back to 2019. The Christmas before Maya was born. Julian had made his grandmother's gingerbread recipe and brought 2 full trays, and my mother had said they were too sweet, and Julian had said, "More for me then," and my father had laughed. Actually laughed. Not the performance law he used in public, but the real one. The one that came out of him before he could stop it. And for about 45 minutes, we had all just been people at a table. No ledger running, no arithmetic, no invisible calculations about who owed whom what. 4 years later, that evening already felt like something I had read in a book once. After dinner, Preston found me at the dessert table, which was where I had retreated to avoid a conversation. My mother was trying to initiate with Adrian's mother about private school options for children neither of them currently had. Clara, he put his arm around my shoulder, the older brother move, even though I was the older one. "You look great. Mom said you have paperwork." He laughed, easy and loose. He'd had 3 glasses of something amber by then. Always straight to business. "That's why you're the smart one." The smart one. That was my designation. In the Vance family taxonomy, I was the smart one. Preston was the charming one. My mother was the social one. My father was the successful one. Present tense always, regardless of the fact that he had been retired for 9 years. I was the smart one, which meant I was the useful one, which meant I was the one who got called when there was a problem with numbers, and not called for anything else. The loan documents, I said. What's the total amount? Something moved behind his eyes, quick, like a fish in dark water, gone before I could name it. We can talk about it Monday, he said. Tonight's about Adrian. Enjoy yourself, okay? Have a drink. You look like you need one. He squeezed my shoulder and moved back toward the main table, and I stood there with a piece of flourless chocolate cake I hadn't asked for and watched him go. The thing about being a CPA is that you develop a particular sensitivity to discrepancy. To the moment when the numbers on the page do not align with the story being told out loud. It is not dramatic. It doesn't arrive with music or a cold feeling down the spine. It arrives quietly, the way a small error in a spreadsheet announces itself. A number that is slightly wrong, almost invisible, but wrong enough to make the entire column fail to balance. Something in Preston's eyes, in that half second before his smile reset, had been slightly wrong. I noted it the way I noted everything. Without reaction, without expression, in the part of my mind that was always running the column, always checking the math, I filed it away. I ate 3 bites of the chocolate cake. It was very good. I drove home at 10:15, down the dark main roads with the heater on full and the radio off, thinking about Maya's crayon drawings in Julian's hallway and the way the flashlight had stayed in her hand, even after she fell asleep, like she'd been holding on to it. The house was dark except for the porch light. Julian always left on when I was coming home late. I came in through the kitchen, set my bag on the counter, and stood very still for a moment in the warm quiet of a house where 2 people I loved were sleeping, and let myself feel it, the specific relief of a place that was mine, actually mine, where the arithmetic was clean, and the numbers added up, and no one was going to ask me to audit anything over gardenias and Chardonnay. Then I went upstairs. Checked on Maya first the way I always did. She had migrated from the fort back to her own bed. Julian must have carried her. And she was sleeping with Gerald, the elephant under one arm, and the kind of absolute abandonment to unconsciousness that only exists before the age of 10. I stood in her doorway for a long time. Then I went to our room, where Julian was already asleep, one arm thrown over my side of the bed, like a placeholder, like a promise. I got in beside him. He stirred, pulled me close without waking, said something that wasn't quite a word. "I'm home," I said. The November wind moved against the windows. The porch light was still on. I closed my eyes. 18 days later, Julian and Maya were gone. The accident report used the word catastrophic. I read it 11 times. I know it was 11 because I counted, the way I count everything, the way my brain refuses to stop processing even when the rest of me has gone completely still. Catastrophic vehicular collision. Interstate 95, northbound mile marker 47. Black ice. A logging truck that crossed the center line at 6:14 in the morning. 4 pages of flat, neutral language that reduces ended lives to coordinates and timestamps. Julian had been taking Maya to her Saturday art class. She had her ladybug backpack, chosen after 45 minutes of deliberation, while Julian stood behind her and never once told her to hurry. The backpack was recovered at the scene. The crayons inside were undamaged. 12 crayons in a yellow box, not a single one broken. I do not know what to do with the fact that the crayons survived. The hospital called at 7:02 a.m. I was in the kitchen in my robe, second cup of coffee, reviewing a client's quarterly tax figures on my laptop. The cursor was blinking in cell G14 when my phone rang. I remember thinking I needed to finish that column before noon. I never finished that column. There are things that do not process in real time. They go somewhere else, while the surface of you keeps functioning because it has to. I signed hospital forms. I called Julian's mother in Bangor, and heard a sound I had never heard a human being make before. I drove home. I sat in the driveway for 22 minutes. I went inside. The blanket fort was still on the living room floor. Maya had kept rebuilding it every afternoon. New configurations, new passwords. The flashlight was inside it, still on. Batteries dying, the beam thin and orange. I turned it off. I sat on the floor beside the fort and did not cry. Not for 4 days. My body understood that if it started, it would not stop, and there were things that needed doing first. The burial was scheduled for Thursday. Julian's mother drove down from Bangor the morning after I called, Arrived at 7 a.m. with a casserole dish and red eyes and arms that held on longer than most people hold on. She sat at my kitchen table and helped me make every call I could not make alone. She found the pastor. She called the cemetery. She did not once tell me to be strong or that everything happens for a reason. I called my parents on Monday. My mother answered on the third ring. Clara. Her voice was careful, already managing. How are you holding up? The burial is Thursday, 10 a.m. Grace Lutheran on Congress Street. A pause. 2 seconds. I noticed it the way I notice everything. The space where discrepancy lives before anyone names it. Thursday. She repeated yes. Clara, your father and I have had Hawaii planned since August. Preston and Adrian are coming. We leave Wednesday, and the flights. I know, I said. I had known before I dialed. The same way you know a column won't balance before you finish adding it. The architecture is already wrong. We'll be back Sunday. We'll come straight to you from the airport. Okay, Mom, Julian would understand. He was a practical man. I said nothing. We'll light a candle at the resort chapel, overlooking the water. Very peaceful. Safe travels, I said. I hung up and put both hands flat on the kitchen table, on the spot where Julian's coffee mug had left a permanent ring in the wood, and I breathed. If you have ever had family, treat your gref like a scheduling conflict, like your worst moment competed with their vacation plans. Tell me in the comments. Because this was not just abandonment. It was a pattern, and patterns always leave evidence. The morning of the burial, it was 21 degrees. The sky was flat gray, pressing down. The cemetery ground was frozen so hard, the diggers had needed specialized equipment. I wore my black wool coat and the gray scarf Julian had given me 2 Christmases ago, and felt the cold rising through the soles of my boots. 17 people came, Julian's mother gripping my arm, his brother David from Connecticut, in a suit slightly too big, and it did not matter. 3 freight coworkers, men in their 50s, weathered faces, dress coats that did not quite fit, men who had driven hours through cold with their hats in both hands. My neighbor Donna came. She had watched Maya after school twice a week for 3 years. She cried the entire time without apology and kept touching my arm like she needed to confirm. I was still standing. The pastor spoke. His breath came out white in the cold air. The bare oaks at the cemetery edge shifted in the wind and made no sound at 10:43 a.m. My coat pocket buzzed. My mother a text. Just landed in Honolulu. Beautiful here. Thinking of you. A flower emoji photo attached. My parents and Preston and Adrian on the tarmac. Sunglasses. Rolling luggage. My mother's head thrown back mid-law. Preston's arm around Adrian. My father squinting into the sun with the real smile. The unguarded one. The one I had last seen at Christmas, 2019. 10:41 a.m. 2 minutes after the pastor had said ashes to ashes. I put the phone in my pocket and did not look at it again until I was home, and the house was quiet in the way. Houses go quiet when they are missing. The people who made them loud. The call came 5 days later. I had been spending evenings in the garage. It smelled like Julian. Motor oil, cedar, the citrus hand cleaner he used after working on the truck, a brand I had always found too strong and now could not get enough of. His green Peterbilt sat enormous and still in the center. I would go in after dark and put my hand on the hood and stand there until my feet went numb. My mother called at 7:18 p.m. Airport sounds behind her voice. Terminal echo, distant announcements. We're at the Honolulu airport. Clara, I need to speak with you about something important. The boardroom register, measured, purposeful, already decided. Preston's dealership is in serious trouble. He needs $40,000 or he loses everything by February. We need you to help him. I sat down on the cold concrete floor, back against the wall, facing the rig. 40,000, I said. You have it. You and Julian were always careful. That is just the truth, and family helps family. We have always said that. Then Preston's voice came through, close, coordinated. You're alone now, Clara. What do you even need that kind of money for anyway? I have replayed those 11 words 400 times. Not, I'm sorry about Julian, not. I'm sorry about Maya, not. I should have been there Thursday. What do you even need that money for anyway? My mother came back on. We can't make more family, Clara. Money we can always find more of. I'll call you back, I said. I hung up. I sat on the garage floor and looked at Julian's rig. The green paint he had been slowly polishing back to life. The chrome mirrors he replaced himself. The passenger door where Maya used to press her whole face flat against the glass. Nose smashed. Both palms spread, laughing. Then I stood up and opened the passenger door to get his spare work jacket. I had been wearing skit in the evenings. It was there. Wedged beneath it, between the seat and the console, was a black composition notebook. I pulled it out. On the cover, in Julian's handwriting. Small, precise, the handwriting of a man who never missed a maintenance interval. 2 words, family ledger. I am a certified public accountant. I have reviewed records that sent people to federal prison. I have walked forensic auditors through fraud, so precisely, they could trace every dollar to its origin. I opened that notebook and understood within 4 pages what I was looking at. Julian had been keeping records for 3 years. It began as notes, the instinct of a careful man who writes things down when something does not add up. Dates, amounts. Account numbers from documents left on our kitchen table during family visits. Gathered up quickly when I entered the room, which I had filed under privacy and never revisited. Julian had not filed it under privacy. I brought the notebook inside, opened my laptop. Built the spreadsheet, clean structure, isolated variables, nothing assumed, column A, date. Column B, amount, column C. Julian's notation. Column D, verification required. Column E, added at 1:17 a.m. after cross-referencing an account number against public property records. Confirmed second mortgage on my parents' home, taken out 18 months ago without my father's knowledge. Amount $127,000. Julian's notation. Arthur asked Preston about a payment notice. Preston said, refinancing. Don't worry. Joint retirement account. Co-signature access given to Preston for ease of management. Withdrawal 14 months prior amount, $43,000. Notation. Evelyn mentioned balance looked low. Preston said market dip. I pulled up the Hawaii resort. 5-star, 8 nights, 4 guests, business class flights both ways. Approximately $24,000. 14 months after $43,000 left their retirement account. I sat in the kitchen where Julian used to drink his coffee standing up. Sitting down for coffee is a waste of good standing time. And I typed in column E. Confirm. My family had called the burial of my husband and my 6-year-old daughter a trivial event. The son they flew to Hawaii to celebrate had funded that trip by draining their own retirement savings. 5 days after, I stood at a frozen graveside with 17 people. They called me to fill the hole he had been digging for 3 years. The arithmetic was no longer beginning. The arithmetic was complete. Stay with me through chapter 3. The moment I stop grieving and start calculating is the moment everything changes permanently. If you have ever been the person everyone leans on until the day you finally stop letting them, you already know what is coming. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with sleep. I know this because I slept. After the burial, after the Hawaii text, after the Honolulu airport call, I slept 8 hours a night like clockwork. My body decided to be efficient about recovery, the same way it was efficient about everything else. I ate, I showered, I answered client emails whose deadlines did not care that my husband and daughter were gone. I filed 2 quarterly returns and reviewed a partnership agreement and sent 14 professional emails in which I used the word unfortunately and meant it about things that had nothing to do with my actual life. I was functional. Completely, thoroughly, professionally functional, and completely hollow. This is what nobody tells you about grief when your family has designated you the strong one, the smart one, the capable one. They do not tell you that the machinery keeps running long after the person operating it has gone somewhere else entirely. That you can process a depreciation schedule at 9 a.m. and then sit in your car in the parking garage at 9:15 and not remember driving there. I was running on a program installed so early I could not find the original file. The notebook changed that, not the way things change in stories. One discovery, one moment of clarity. It changed the way an audit changes things, gradually, then all at once, column by column, until the number at the bottom is undeniable. 4 nights with Julian's family ledger and my laptop, and on the 5th night, I understood something I should have understood years ago. I had been living inside books that had been falsified for 34 years. Every family runs on a set of accounts. Not financial ones, or not only financial ones. I mean the internal ledger every person carries, the one that tracks what was given and what was taken, who showed up and who did not. Most people run this ledger unconsciously. You just know when something feels unbalanced, you adjust, and you move on. I had been adjusting for 34 years. I adjusted when my parents skipped my CPA exam results to attend Preston's car show. I adjusted when my mother told her friends I worked in taxes as though I were seasonal help, rather than a licensed CPA with 14 clients and a forensic specialty. I adjusted when Preston called me the smart one at every dinner, as though it were a consolation prize. I had adjusted so many times I had lost track of what the original balance was. Julian's notebook showed me. He was not building a case. He was a man who noticed things and wrote them down, and over 3 years of dinners, and holiday visits, and documents left on our kitchen table, he had noticed a pattern. Preston had been withdrawing from accounts that were not the retirement fund. The second mortgage. A joint checking account my mother gave him access to for household emergencies, used for dealership inventory, twice, and a boat payment once. The boat, I had seen it at a 4th of July gathering 2 summers ago. White, medium-sized. Preston had called it an investment. I pulled up the marina records. Registered in Preston's name. Purchase date. 14 months ago. Same month as the $43,000 retirement withdrawal. I sat with that for a long time and did not look away. If you have ever done the math on your own family and wish you had. If you have ever found the number that explained everything you had been trying not to understand for years, drop a comment below. Because this is the part of the story where I stopped being the person things happened to and became the person who decided what happened next. The call I had been avoiding came on a Tuesday. My mother. Not from an airport. From the house. Her regular number, 7 p.m. The time she called when she wanted a real conversation rather than a managed one. I let it ring twice, then I answered. Clara. Her voice was different. Not the boardroom register. Something older underneath. I have been thinking about you. I know, I said. The 40,000. A pause. Preston is in real trouble, sweetheart. I do not use that word lightly. Sweetheart. She used it approximately 4 times a year, deployed strategically. The way you hold a reserve for the right moment. I know he is in trouble, I said, more specifically than she realized. Your father and I have done everything we could for that business. And now we are asking you, as a family, to help keep it together. The pronoun shift. We are asking you. Preston's whole had become a family responsibility, quietly redistributed the way all his deficits always were, to whoever had an available balance, on the assumption I would always have one. Mom, I said. I need to ask you something. Of course. When did Preston get co-signature access to your retirement account? Silence. 2 seconds. The same length as the pause when I told her about the burial. He helps us manage things. It is just easier. When did he take out the second mortgage on the house? 5 seconds this time, I counted. How do you know about that? Not a question. Her voice had gone flat the way voices go when the answer is already understood and only damage control remains. I know about the retirement account, I said. I know about the boat. I know about the dealership inventory charges and the outstanding balance on the second mortgage. I know how the Hawaii trip was funded. Clara, I know exactly how much of your retirement has been withdrawn in the last 3 years. Do you want me to give you the number? Silence. Where did you get this? Julian kept records, I said. He noticed things and wrote them down. He was that kind of man. I heard her breath change, something shifting underneath her. Whatever you think you know. I do not think I know anything, Mom. I know what the documents say. I know what the property records confirm. I know what a forensic accountant, which I am, can verify from public sources alone, before I even open Julian's private documentation. Quiet on the line. I also know, I said, that the $40,00 you and Preston have been asking me to contribute is protected by a certified bank gift letter. You and Dad both signed 7 years ago, meaning you have no legal right to reclaim it, which I suspect you already know, which is why you have been asking instead of demanding. My mother said nothing. I had spent 34 years filling the silences in this family, softening them. I did not fill this one. Here is the arithmetic moment, not the spreadsheet, not the property records, not even the notebook. The arithmetic moment was this. I was sitting in my kitchen at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, 11 weeks after burying my husband and my 6-year-old daughter, having a conversation with my mother about financial fraud. And at no point in the entire conversation had she asked me how I was doing. Not once. No question about whether I was sleeping. No question about whether I was eating or functioning or surviving the specific silence of a house missing the two people who made it loud. Not a word about Julian. Not a word about Maya. Not a word about the burial she missed, the text she sent 2 minutes after the pastor finished, or the 11 words her son said from a Hawaiian airport about what I even needed money for. Now that I was alone, I was the infrastructure. I had always been the infrastructure, not a family member. Infrastructure. Roads do not get asked how they are doing. You apply weight, expect them to hold, and when they crack, you call it a structural failure and find another route. I had been holding weight for 34 years and no one had ever once checked the load limit. The arithmetic was this. I was done, not angry done. Quietly, completely, accountant done. Close the file, mark it complete, do not open it again. I need some time, I told my mother. Clara, I will be in touch, I said. I hung up. I sat in the kitchen for a long time. The house was quiet in the way it was always quiet now. Julian's coffee mug sat on the top left corner of the table, where I had not moved it in 11 weeks. Maya's drawings lined the hallway. 12 framed, the green giant with the little girl waving from the passenger window. Crayon lines confident and crooked and absolutely certain. I looked at those drawings until my eyes adjusted to the low light. Then I opened my laptop and started a new spreadsheet. Not the fraud documentation. That file was already complete, saved in 3 locations, reviewed by a colleague who confirmed everything I had found. This spreadsheet was different. Column A, asset. Column B, current value. Column C, projected value at 36 months. Column D, action required. I had Julian's life insurance. I had our savings. Intact, untouched, 8 years of 2 careful people building toward a future taken from us on a frozen highway in November. I had my CPA license, my client roster, my forensic specialty, 12 years of credibility in Maine. I had Julian's green Peterbilt, fully restored. I had finished it myself, working evenings in the garage, hands busy while my head ran its calculations, and I had Maya's drawings. All 400, sorted and archived. The green giant in every configuration she had ever imagined it. The little girl, always waving. Vance and Daughter Freight. I typed those 4 words at the top of the spreadsheet and sat back and read it. The arithmetic was no longer about what had been taken from me. It was about what I was going to build with what remained. And in 3 weeks, at my parents' 40th anniversary party, I was going to let my family watch me do both at the same time. My parents' 40th anniversary party was held at the Harborview Club, same room as Adrian's birthday 4 months earlier. Same gardenias. Same warm gold lighting, same jazz quartet near the bar playing something soft enough to talk over. 40 guests, extended family, old neighbors, my father's former colleagues. The kind of room where everyone has known everyone for decades and knows the fault lines of every family in it. I arrived 15 minutes late. Intentional. I wanted the room full before I walked in. I wore a dark green dress I had bought the week before. Not black. I was done with black. The green was the same shade as Julian's Peterbilt, and I had chosen it deliberately, the way I chose everything now, with full awareness of what it meant and zero interest in pretending otherwise. I carried a manila folder, 2 documents inside. The first, a certified bank gift letter, 7 years old, signed by both parents, legally witnessed, stating that the $40,000 transferred to Julian and me was an irrevocable gift. No expectation of return. The second, a 12-page time-stamped financial timeline, ending with a beach photo, from Honolulu, dated the morning after a 6-year-old's burial. My attorney had reviewed both the week before. She looked at me over her glasses when she finished. You know what this does to your family? I know what my family did, I said. She nodded. Then you're ready. My mother found me within 4 minutes of my arrival. Silver dress, good pearls, the particular brightness of a woman who had decided tonight would go smoothly regardless of what it cost her to maintain that. She kissed my cheek, told me I looked well. Did not mention our phone call. My father embraced me. Genuinely, the real hug, the one he gave before age and pride put distance between us. He smelled like the same aftershave he had worn my entire life. For a moment holding that hug, I felt the specific grief of loving someone clearly enough to see exactly what they chose not to be. Then he stepped back. Clara, I hope tonight we can put some of this business with Preston behind us. We're going to resolve everything tonight, Dad, I said. I promise. Preston was across the room with Adrian, working the crowd. Easy smile, firm handshake. The performance of a man who needed everyone to like him, because he could not afford anyone looking closely. He saw me arrive. His smile held, but something behind his eyes moved the same way it had at Adrian's party 4 months ago. Fish in dark water. He knew, not the specifics. But people who have been doing wrong always sense when the accounting is coming. Something in the air changes. I found a seat and waited. If you have ever walked into a room, knowing you were about to change everything, knowing that the people around you were still living in a version of events that was about to end, tell me in the comments. Because the hardest part was not what I was about to do. The hardest part was how calm I felt doing it. Dinner was served at 8, toasts at 8:45. My father's old colleague spoke first warmly, genuinely. My mother's sister spoke second funny and affectionate. Then my father stood up. Eigent's card, barely glanced at. Arthur Vance was always most dangerous when comfortable, and tonight he was comfortable. 40 years, full room, family around him. He spoke about my mother, the early years, building something together. About Preston, the dealership, the ambition, the son carrying the family name forward. He said legacy twice. He talked about loyalty, showing up, bonds that do not bend under pressure. He did not mention Julian. He did not mention Maya. Not once. I had told myself I was prepared for this. But sitting in that gold-lit room in my green dress, listening to a speech about family loyalty, delivered to people who did not know about the Honolulu photo, I felt something unlock in my chest. Not anger. Something older and more precise than anger. He finished. The room applauded. The waitstaff began cutting the anniversary cake, white with gold, lettering, 40 years in frosted script, and then my father looked directly at me across the room, in front of 40 people, and said, Clara, I hope you'll take this occasion to reflect on what family really means. Your brother needs you. We all need you to show up the way this family has always shown up for each other. 40 heads turned. I stood up. I walked to the main table. Not quickly, not slowly. I set the manila folder on the white linen next to the anniversary cake. Dad, I said, you just spoke about family showing up. I want to make sure everyone here understands what that looks like. I placed the first document on the table. The bank gift letter. This is a certified bank gift letter, signed by you and Mom 7 years ago. It states that the $40,000 transferred to Julian and me is an irrevocable gift. Not a loan, not a debt. A gift, witnessed and certified. Preston has been asking me to return this money for 3 months. This document is why that request has no legal standing. The room was very quiet. The jazz quartet had stopped. I placed the second document beside the first. This is a timeline. It documents withdrawals from your joint retirement account over 3 years, totaling $43,000. It documents the second mortgage taken out on this family's home 18 months ago for $127,000. A mortgage you, Dad, did not know about until this moment. It documents a boat purchase in Preston's name, dated the same month as the largest retirement withdrawal. I turned the last page face up. And this is a photograph, posted publicly on social media. Our family at the Honolulu airport, timestamp, 10:41 a.m. on November 14th. I looked at my father. Julian and Maya's burial ended at 10:43 a.m. on November 14th. The pastor said ashes to ashes at 10:41. To the minute. Not a single person in that room moved. The Hawaii trip was funded from the retirement withdrawal made 14 months prior. I have the transfer records. I have the receipts. I have 3 years of documentation compiled by my late husband, who noticed something was wrong and wrote it down because he was that kind of man. My voice did not shake. Preston has been committing financial elder abuse. That is the legal term. Taking money from elderly parents without their knowledge or consent. It is a crime in the state of Maine. It is a crime in every state. I closed the folder. You asked me to show up for this family the way this family has always shown up. I just did. I looked at Preston. He was standing still beside Adrian. The easy smile was gone entirely, and underneath it was something that was not quite a face yet. Just a man, the real one, stripped of every layer, in a room full of people who had just been given the arithmetic. My mother had both hands flat on the table. My father was still holding his index card, the card that no longer corresponded to any version of this evening. "I'm leaving these documents here," I said. "Anyone who wants to review them is welcome. Mom, Dad, call an independent financial advisor this week. Not Preston. Someone who works for you." I picked up my bag. "I love you," I said to my parents. And I meant it, which was the hardest part. Not the documents, not the room, not 40 people watching. The hardest part was that it was true. I loved them clearly and completely, and from a very great distance, the way you can love something you have finally accepted, you cannot fix. "But I am done being infrastructure," I said. I walked out. That was 14 months ago. I have not spoken to Preston since. His attorney contacted mine 6 weeks later. I will not discuss the legal details here. I am telling you this story because of something I learned sitting in Julian's truck with a composition notebook at midnight in a cold Maine garage. Financial elder abuse is the fastest growing form of family fraud in this country. Most victims never report it. Most perpetrators are adult children with co-signature access or power of attorney, granted under family pressure. The average victim loses between $50,000 and $150,000 before anyone notices. Because the person taking the money is someone they love, and love is the most effective audit-blocking mechanism ever invented. If someone in your family manages your accounts, call your bank directly and request a full transaction history, going back 3 years. If they tell you that is hurtful or unnecessary, that response is your answer. Blood does not grant financial immunity. A signature does. Vance and Daughter Freight has been running for 11 months, 3 green Peterbilts. On every door, a crayon-style drawing. A green giant with a little girl waving from the passenger window. Maya's design. The handwriting of a 6-year-old who drew the same thing 400 times because she loved it. She is in all 3, every mile. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Shadow Drama Stories for more stories about family, money, and the math that changes everything. The truth always balances. It just takes someone willing to run the numbers.